following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
You're listening to the Sabrecast, brought to you by Better Live Than Dead. And now your hosts, Brayton Wilson and Ryan Wolfe.
And with that, we welcome you to the Sabrecast. I believe it is Season 2, Episode 7. I am behind the 8 ball, surprisingly, here on the podcast. I should have popped it up beforehand, but we will get there in just a second. But either way, I am Ryan Wolfe, at WolfBLTV on Twitter, joined on the line by a good friend. He really should be on the payroll at this point, with how much we have had him on the podcast, but we enjoy having him. Ben Mathewson, at Ben_Mathewson on Twitter. Ben, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing well. How are you? Good to be on.
I'm good, and I'm glad to have you. As we were saying before we got on the podcast, I am not wanting to do anything, so I'm glad that you wanted the podcast because it gave me a reason to. I mean, this is obviously doing something, but I would rather be doing this than going to the gym this evening.
Yeah, sure, no doubt.
So the one thing I wanted to ask you that I've been thinking about the past few days, because I saw on Twitter, this has nothing to do with the Sabres. Has everything to do with music. I saw you mention that Maren Morris, you believe that she has the record of the year. I want to hear your thoughts on this because I don't necessarily disagree. I just want to hear what you think about it.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up. So I think last year it was extremely heartening that Casey Musgraves won Album of the Year because that's the first time my favorite album of the year actually won Album of the Year at the Grammys. And, you know, the Grammys are an interesting thing because my taste doesn't necessarily always align with what works at the Grammys, but I also feel like I have a decent sense of what is a Grammy-worthy record or whatever, and that doesn't really matter that much. But so it was really interesting to me that, you know, my taste in really enjoying the Casey Musgraves record aligned with the critical success of the Grammys. Anyway, so when the Maren Morris record came out, and I listened through to it a couple times, it just really has the same kind of vibe where Maren fits this really interesting space where she's sort of country, she's sort of pop, but she's not really firmly either, but she's not even like firmly a crossover artist. Like she's almost closer to like a Chris Stapleton Brothers Osborne area of the music industry, but still doesn't really fit well there. So she's got this really interesting appeal across all different genres and listening communities or whatever you want to call it. And so I think she's got that going for it. And then she's just got just incredible songs. Like it's extremely cliche, something that's thrown around here in Nashville, but like it all starts with a song. And when you've got a record with as many great songs as she does on that record, especially The Bones, like if you haven't listened to her song, The Bones, like I'm not sure I've heard a better written song in the last decade, and which is then just made that much better by her performance. So I just think it's one of those, you know, from start to finish records that you put on, you listen to every single track all the way through, and it's easily one of the best. You know, I'm curious what the critical, well, I got to think about if the Taylor Swift record is going to qualify for this year. The cutoff is weird for the Grammys. It might not qualify actually, but
like October or November. It's October, I think.
So they changed it this year. I think the last day of eligibility was August 31st and wasn't Lover in September.
Oh yeah, you're right. So yeah, it says Grammy cutoff for eligible records is August 31st.
She's next year.
Rather than traditional September 30th, which will result in
because I have to. Right. One of the things I have to do for my job is submit a bunch of our artists for Grammy consideration. So I had to be on top of that this summer. And
I still think you have the coolest job in the world, but that's just my opinion.
I got pretty lucky. It's pretty fun. But yeah, so, you know, outside of the major, I mean, you can kind of help me jog my memory, but like, what are some of the really big records this year in both pop and country and hip hop? And, you know,
I mean, you're probably going to have.
There's not a Bruno Mars record this year.
No, I got to see. Now that I have the date, because I've been looking for that for a while now to see what is actually going to come out. Yeah, so let's
I mean, that's a part of it too. Is I think the field is kind of open this year.
Taylor Swift came out August 23rd, so she just got in.
So she's in it. Okay, so then that was timed strategically. Then, yeah. So she'll be an album of the year. running, I guess.
The other one too. Oh, Post Malone. I was going to say Post Malone would probably have a nice little run at the Grammys, but his
That's interesting.
6 days after the cutoff, so that's interesting.
Yeah, so they're doing next year. They're probably my guess with Post Malone is they're looking to have like 8 singles off that record and roll into next year's Grammys.
That record already has, I think, 6 from December 2018 to October 2019. 6 singles off that record. Holy crap!
Yeah, they're probably going for 2 years of eligibility with that record, so they're going to get a bunch of songs for nominated this year in different song categories, and then the following year try to do an album.
Is that what? Is that kind of what Lizzo did? That's a strange one for me because I know that they.
Lizzo's a good point too. That I don't know. I don't even actually remember the date of her album release because I guess hers would be inside this. Because I know it wasn't Truth Hurts like a 2 or 3 year old song now.
I'm looking it up right now.
But that
this
record
is what I love about
out.
the podcast too is we can just sit here and we're going to talk about the Sabres in a second, but we're taking you on a run around the world here. So
I'm glad you brought up Lizzo though, because that's actually a really good point. What was the date of her record?
That came out
Because I Love You. Okay, it's Because I Love You. It was April 2019. So I think Lizzo was almost certainly going to be in that in the running for Album of the Year.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll probably win a ton. Because that is speaking of records, front to back records that are really good. That is a really good record front to back.
If it qualifies, I'm curious about what the official release date of Truth Hurts was, but if it qualifies, that would actually probably be my pick for Record of the Year, which for those that don't remember, the difference between Record of the Year and Song of the Year is record is the actual the recorded performance of it, and Song of the Year is the songwriting award. So given it's an incredible performance, and then just the cultural phenomenon that Truth Hurts is, that'd probably be my pick right now for
it looks like
Record of the Year.
It looks like the song Truth Hurts came out in 2017, but obviously that record came out in 2019. So either way,
that's going to be interesting.
That'll be interesting to see how that works out. Yeah, because it's been incredible.
Yeah, because I remember reading a story that was.
But here's the thing, though.
It took forever to.
But here's the loophole, though, and I'm interested to hear. Maybe you can look into this and let me know, or ask around at your day-to-day job, or your what do they call it, the 9 to 5. Truth Hurts came out in 2017, but they re-released it on the deluxe version of the record. So I wonder if that kind of resets the clock.
Are you reading the Billboard article? Because I just brought one up that says it might still qualify. So if it might still qualify, it probably does, because I think the Grammys will do anything they can to make sure the awards are relevant. So I'd expect it to qualify. So if it's nominated, it's going to win Record of the Year, I would think. So anyway, back to Maren Morris. Yeah, I just think she kind of fits that really interesting middle ground where she's, pretty popular across the board, across most ages, and the Grammy voting. The Grammy voters, I think she sort of fits the critical acclaim that they'd like to support while also being culturally relevant. I think she's very culturally relevant at this point in what she's doing. So yeah, and it's just a great record. It's just extremely good. Listening through, like anytime I put it on, you put on the first track, it's like, yeah, I'm going to be here for the next 45 minutes to an hour, however long it is, because I can't skip any songs and not listen to the rest of this. It's just extremely good.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with you. It's
I got to finally see her. Right. I finally got to see her perform. I was in New York City a couple weeks ago, and I got to see her play at Radio City. And it was number one, was the first time I had to go to Radio City, which was a really cool experience in and of itself. And then to see a performance from her that was just off the charts good, just like top to bottom. The whole thing was I brought 2 buddies of mine, and like one of them knew knew some of her singles or whatever they'd hear on the radio, and the other one knew almost like none of her music. And they walked out like that was the best part of our trip to New York City, was the 2 hours we were at that show for her, because she just put on such an incredible show and was so she just captured your attention, even though she doesn't like do a lot of like running and dancing around her. She's often, she does a little bit, but she's often got a guitar in her hand and she's just belting it, and you just feel it. And she's just incredible. She's an incredible performer.
I was going to say, that seemed like it was one hell of a time, especially like you said. Not only is it Maren Morris, but it's Radio City Music Hall, so you kind of check off 2 big boxes right there.
Yeah.
Also, the one thing I want to mention before we talk about the Buffalo Sabres, because you mentioned Taylor Swift, so I absolutely have to mention this.
Yeah.
The Los Angeles Kings believe that the Taylor Swift banner has cursed them, so they now have covered it up during games. It says here, now follow me on this one. The banner, which was raised August 21st, 2015, after Taylor Swift's record 16th sold-out concert at Staples Center, has been an eyesore for many Kings fans. And this is from the Los Angeles Times, reading it verbatim here. They don't think it's a coincidence the Kings have failed to win a playoff series since the banner went up. The Kings won the Stanley Cup in 2012 and 2014, as well as advanced to the conference finals in 2013. They finished with the worst record in the Western Conference and the second worst record in the league last season. And I quote, "The connection to our fans is our highest priority, and through our engagement, I apologize, they have made it clear that the banner shouldn't be a part of the Kings game experience." Michael Altieri, the Senior Vice President of Marketing, Communications, and Content for the Kings and AEG Sports, he says, "We didn't see an issue in covering it for our games, and in fact, we see it as an opportunity to show our fans that we hear them." Ah, boy. Isn't hockey weird, man? It's just the weirdest.
Yeah, that's a really weird story. I mean, I guess I give the Kings credit. I mean, if they clearly were getting a lot of messages or whatever from fans indicating that they really hated it, I mean, I guess, it doesn't take that much to get a win there and do a solid for your fans if there's serious outcry against it. It's just, I don't know. I've never cared. I mean, I don't know. The Preds have one here in Nashville for Garth Brooks. He's had, I think, like 9 sold out shows or whatever. And the only other place I've seen him is New York. They've got a Billy Joel banner in the Garden and at Nassau Coliseum. Yes. So I guess I don't even know how popular they are at other arenas, but man, I don't know. It is sort of weird because like, the ones in New York make a lot of sense because, Billy Joel's a New York boy. He's from Long Island. Like, it makes perfect sense that, they'd celebrate a local kid done good and selling out a ton of shows in their arenas. And Garth Brooks makes a little sense, obviously, here in Nashville, being at the country music stuff and all that. Taylor Swift in LA is a little bit weird. I mean, I guess it's cool that it's a record. It's a little weird to put a banner up for that because she doesn't really have any significant connection to LA that I'm aware of. She's mainly New York and Nashville at this point. But yeah,
for the record,
I don't know.
I believe they covered it up before the Predators Kings game where the Kings won 7-4.
Did they? I think
so it says here that they are Bailey, the wonderful mascot of the Kings, says that we are undefeated at home with the banner covered.
Yeah, there you go.
I guess you got that going.
Yeah, that's weird. Hockey's weird. Hockey fans are weird.
Hockey's very weird, and rightfully so. Hey, look at, speaking of weird hockey, the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah.
They are 5-0-1 in 6 games, 11 out of 12 potential points taken, I guess, after a matinee day victory on Columbus Day. It's a good day to have Kids Day, which is what they did today at the KeyBank Center. And Ben, the Buffalo Sabres looked spectacular from start to finish in that game today.
Yeah, that second period specifically was when they sort of took over. The first period was pretty boring. This is a weird way to sort of gauge the way a game works, but doing the gift stuff is kind of an interesting way for me to get a feel for how the game is going. And typically, I don't know, a normal period of Sabres hockey, I capture like 7 to 10 clips during a period that's like average, different interesting passing plays or a goal or whatever else, defensive plays, goals, saves from the goaltender, whatever. And for that first period against Dallas, I had 2, and they were reaches because nothing happened in the first. One thing I got was Skinner drawing a hooking penalty because I thought it was kind of interesting, and we were already halfway through the period. I was like, I need to get something here because nothing's happening. And then another one was a missed high stick by Ben Bishop where he high sticked the puck, and like, it's ridiculous that I thought to even capture him because like one of the things I try to do is I'm trying to watch closely and gather interesting stuff beyond just highlight reel goals. And man, that first period there was just nothing to watch. It was a bit back and forth, which was kind of cool. I mean, so it wasn't totally lacking for action. Like it was sort of up and down the ice, but man, nothing that interesting happened. So it was weird. And in the second period, the Sabres just kind of came out about 5 minutes in and just basically took over the game at that point. Through the whole rest of the second period, they were in control of the shot share. And expected goal totals and all. I mean, they crushed them in expected goals in the second period. And in the third period, they kind of let off a little bit, but that was certainly score effects at play at that point because they were pretty even for shot share, or they maintained their advantage in shot share through the first couple minutes. They got the 2 goals early on, and then after they went up 4-0, basically the Stars just fired from everywhere on the ice and made that even. But yeah, I mean, the second period was what won it for him, and then Carter Hutton putting up a shutout was pretty cool too.
Yeah, I was going to say the big news story today in the game was not the fact that Carter Hutton recorded his first shutout as a member of the Buffalo Sabres. It was that Victor Olofsson scored his 5th career goal, or his fifth goal. Yeah, sorry, they haven't updated the stats here. I'm looking at 2 different things at once. His 5th career goal. Why is that so important, you ask? Because all 7 of his goals have come on the power play, which is now a new NHL record.
Right, which is interesting. So yeah, so he had 2 power play goals last season when he was up at the end of the year, and then had 5 or so this year, which it's crazy. It's cool to see someone set a record like that for the NHL, and especially a guy that has waited so long to finally really get a shot in the NHL. And he's scoring goals. He's got the shot that we've all seen. He made a sick pass today to Reinhart on his goal at 5-on-5, but like, I'm thrilled he is scoring on the power play because that's one of the reasons like you have a player like that. He's going to score a ton, and he's clearly doing it. And I don't see any reason he'll stop because it's not like other teams can focus on him and try to take it away because Eichel's on the other side ready to score there too. So that's a huge advantage, and why I think, you can't depend on power play to win you games. I don't think because power plays are so inconsistent as far as the number you have, and then just like 2 icings against them, like you have no shot at really scoring a goal. Anyway, so trying to depend on a power play is murky at best. But when they have them, I think they're going to be good, and they're going to continue to score all year because they got those 2 guys. Plus Skinner and Reinhart in front. Like, they're going to score goals. At the same time, like, I really need him to score at 5-on-5 at some point if he's really going to be a goal scorer. I mean, people are talking about Rookie of the Year and stuff, and I mean, I hope so, but you can't win Rookie of the Year off the back of power play goals. Like, you got to do something at 5-on-5. The assist he had today was great, and that's excellent to get primary points at 5-on-5, and that's exactly what we're hoping for. But do it when the other team isn't shorthanded, and it's a little bit more difficult. And I'll be that much more bought in to him as everyone else seems to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's killed it on the power play, as you mentioned, Ben. But it's at some point in time, those power play goals will dry up, and can you match that production? Maybe not necessarily match it, but even if you can do half the production on even strength, that would be fantastic. Looking at the stat sheet here too for the Sabres game today, the one thing that stands out to me, Jack Eichel, the Sabres win 4-0. Jack Eichel has 2 points, ends up with no shots on goal. I guess that's kind of a turning of the a changing of the guard, if you will, because before it was if Jack Eichel doesn't score or do anything, the Sabres don't do anything. So now it seems like this was a good game to go. Hey, it's Eichel had, I believe Joe Yearden on Twitter pointed out they had one shot that was on like a one shot, but it wasn't.
He had
on
one
goal.
shot attempt.
Yeah, I couldn't find the word there. Thank you. And
he had one individual Corsi for basically.
But again, 2 assists, still doing work out there. He looked decent today. I mean, the Sabres.
Mm-hmm.
The weird thing about the Sabres so far this season, Ben, is that they've looked good, but also when they get down, they don't give up, and when they blow leads, they don't give up. That's been, I think, the only real big problem we've seen so far this year was that overtime game with Columbus, where Jack Eichel was dog tired and just melted down on the ice, which led to Columbus winning. That's really been one of the biggest detractions. But again, it wasn't like it was a boneheaded play. You could clearly see Eichel was just completely gassed and was trying to get the puck away to get back. And, it is what it is. What happened is what happened. You can't win every game. But so far, I mean, 5 out of 6 is not bad to start the season. And as mentioned, right now, the Buffalo Sabres are first in the Atlantic. And if we look at the
they're first in the league, technically, pending the Edmonton game tonight.
Yeah, as of time of podcast, Buffalo Sabres first in the league.
Right. So the interesting thing with the Sabres start, it's, keeps getting compared to the 10-game winning streak last year, which I think is totally fair and something we should do and something we should learn from. I know I definitely needed to learn from that experience. And it was funny because during the win streak, I think we all knew it was a bit dubious, but I don't think we realized how lucky they were getting. And so looking back, you kind of, looking at the expected goal totals and the shot shares, and you see that, they really were just eking out really lucky wins. The positive so far, again, it's only 6 games and sample sizes are still really important and they're still extremely small. Most of the games they're basically where they need to be as far as expected goal totals are for. So they're not getting lucky. They are creating opportunities and they're controlling most of the play in general, and they're getting rewarded for it. And so that is a positive sign going forward. Some of those numbers have started to creep down, and I'm still nervous about them continuing to play like that. Just, I don't know, until they do it for 25 games, I guess I won't be convinced. Probably a bit of an overcorrection based on what happened last year, but I just don't really feel like getting burned again like I did following last season. So the positive is that the underlying numbers support the fact that they're winning games. Unlike the other team that might jump into first later tonight, Edmonton, who hasn't lost yet this year, their underlinings are terrible. They are so bad still, and they are strictly getting lucky, and it's going to be a hard come down, except for the fact they have McDavid, and maybe he can drag them to relevancy. But
when he's not on the ice, 37 goals already this season?
Yeah, pretty much. So it'll be interesting to watch those two teams and what kind of regression may or may not happen. In theory, the Sabres really shouldn't crush them because their underlying suggests that they aren't getting lucky or overperforming what's expected. So that's a major positive to me, but I really just want to see it again for another 20 games before I really buy in.
Yeah, here's your stat of the day. If you haven't heard already, James Neal has 7 goals in 5 games with the Edmonton Oilers. We call that the Connor McDavid effect. Last season in Calgary, in 63 games, he scored 7 goals total. So he's shooting almost 37% at this point in time. So I was close on the 37, just his shot percentage. But here's a good thing to kind of keep everybody honest. Like you said, Ben, the numbers they don't look bad for Buffalo. It's not like they're Edmonton where they're doing well, but they're overperforming what appears to be overperforming. You look at the Atlantic Division, it is a perfect example of you've got last year's record-setting Tampa Bay Lightning currently sitting 7th with 5 points in 5 games, a 2-2-1 record. You've got Detroit, who I don't think a lot of people expect to make the playoffs this year, in 4th, 3-2-0 with 6 points. You've got Toronto even at 3-2-1 through 6 games. Again, it's not. It's something where you can look at it and say this is a good thing to see. It's a good start. It's very reassuring. But another example, New Jersey expected to be just crushing it this season. They have scored 13 goals and allowed 29 goals, a -16 goal differential. They are 0-4-2 in 6 games with 2 points. I mean, again, it takes a few minutes to get the wheels rolling. It's a very long season, as we saw last year. I think it's a good thing that last year, and call me crazy, I think that 10-game win streak was a good thing to happen because first off, it showed fans that the Sabres could be good. But then that coming down
it was extremely fun.
It was also very hard to come down. So it's kind of like it helps us now this season. We're not going, oh my God, the Sabres are going to be amazing. They're going to win, 55 games or 45 games or however many games you want to throw out there that they'll win whatever pace they're on for right now. You'll say, okay, they're doing good now, but let's look at the fancy stats like you mentioned, Ben, and let's wait for the other shoe to drop because they will regress at some point in time. But it's how they respond from that regression. Once the league adjusts to them, how they readjust to the league. That's what will show you how good this hockey team actually is.
Sure. Yeah. It's the other thing I'm nervous about a bit is their schedule is relatively light. I mean, the Montreal and Florida games were supposed to be the really tough games through here, and they ended up going to overtime in a shootout in those games. I don't really know what to think of the Ducks yet. I think they've got significantly better coaching, of course, now that Carlisle's gone. But I don't know what they really have on that roster. LA is going to be bad, so they should beat LA, even though it's on the back half of back-to-back. San Jose is supposed to be good, so who knows? In those 2 games, they've struggled, but they're certainly still more talented than Buffalo, I think. But then you got the Rangers, Detroit, and Arizona to finish off the month. Like, it's an awesome place to be. Like, you can really rack up wins and get a ton of points here in the first month, and that is a great place to start. Then you're off and running. But it's hard to know if they're actually good because of it. Because, they've beaten some pretty bad teams so far. And the positive is that they're beating teams that are in fact bad. And, we can safely assume that the Sabres are better than these bad teams when they do it. But I like to have an idea. You're never going to have full certainty, especially in sports, and that obviously makes it more fun. But I like to try to understand why things are happening, and I just get really nervous and skeptical when I'm still not sure because of the opponents they've had to play so far. So it's an incredible opportunity. I hope they recognize that this is a huge opportunity to walk out of the first month of the season with points in like 90% of their games would be an incredible place to start and get off and running and, make it a 4-team race in the Atlantic instead of having to chase everyone. You can be right in the middle of the pack with it. So I'm encouraged and hoping to see it continue, but still a bit skeptical a week and a half into the season so far.
It's nice to keep things into perspective for sure. It's a lot of fun. You look at like I'm looking at the statistics right now before today's game, but even with today's game, let me get back to here. I'm clicking on the wrong screen. That certainly always helps. You want to just see them continue to grow. Either they make the playoffs this year or they're close enough, but you don't want to see something obviously where the trade deadline rolls around and they're already out of the playoffs. So I guess if it's something where Buffalo can continue to make strides, it would suck to have another season where you go, no more, another season where there's no playoffs. That would suck real bad, obviously. But I guess if you just take another step forward, as long as it's not a, hey, we scored, we got 3 more points than last year. We're making progress. You obviously want to see Eichel have a great year. You want to see Reinhart, Dahlin have a great year, which they're all off to great starts. You've got Victor Olofsson and his incredible shot. That's been a lot of fun to watch so far in the first few games. I know that there have been a few people up in arms about Ralph Kruger's coaching decisions, but then again, you get some rope to make those decisions when your team is playing as well as they are. So again, it'll take some time. I'm sure the other shoe will drop at some point in time, but again, that's the cool thing about this is you just collect as many points as you can and brace for those hard times and then move forward from there.
Right. Well, and one thing I will say that is extremely encouraging is their defensive results. The amount of goals given up and the expected goals given up at 5-5 is incredible. It's a really good job. And if you look at the visuals from Michael Blake McCurdy, where it shows where teams are taking shots from or are unable to get to and take shots from, Buffalo is protecting the right areas. And that is great because that's often just, it's system based in a way. It's kind of everyone being on the same page of like, okay, this is what we are protecting. We don't care about anything else. We're keeping people out of this area. And they've been successful at it so far. And to me, I find that's a little bit more sustainable than trying to keep up like high-powered offense. It's the reason, as much as I would kill to have the Maple Leafs roster, the reason it's a little bit more difficult to depend on that because you can't always. I think that the Leafs are so talented that they will be able to outscore their issues, but it takes more work, I think, to outscore your issues in that way versus being more sound defensively and getting just average goaltending to make it work because they've just done an excellent job defensively so far. And obviously, of course, the upgrades on defense are a big part of that. And that fourth line. And I mean, most of the lines have been pretty good outside of the middle stat line, although today they had they did a great job in shot share. But, so I find that really, really encouraging that their defense is so much team defense overall, offense, and the forwards and defensemen has been significantly improved. And I think that's a sustainable way to continue to win going on in the future.
One thing that gives me hope too, and it's something, it's so minute, so minuscule. But we heard a couple days ago, over the weekend, I believe it was actually, that Jason Botterill called Victor Olofsson and Henry Jokiharju and said, "Hey, you guys find a place to stay because you're going to hang out for a while." And to me, I know with Jokiharju in specific, coming into the season, a lot of people were saying he's very talented. He's probably going to be a top 4 defenseman at some point in time. It may not be this year, but he definitely belongs on an NHL roster. And then you looked at the Sabres roster and you go, well, they have approximately all of the NHL defensemen that are available right now, so something's got to give. And he has played his ass off, I think. He's been great. Not only made himself look good, he's made the parking cone that is Marco Scandella look very good too. And I think that tells me, that gives me hope that, for every Ryan O'Reilly move that's made, because again, that's always the bad on the spectrum. There's a Henry Jokiharju move where, he might screw up and make a bad move, but he goes out and trades Alexander Nylander, who, granted, the first game scored a goal. Good job. Congratulations to him. The second game, he gets himself benched. So it was very hot, cold. That'll be fun to watch in Chicago, especially because Chicago has not been good out of the gate. But again, it's only a few games. But to see the GM and coaching staff be able to recognize that, this guy is good, will be good, and it's not a fluke that he's playing so well.
Well, it's funny because the reason I haven't been as quick to get upset with Botterill as a lot of fans rightfully have been, to be honest, most of the moves he has made, I think, are really good and smart. The issue is the one he screwed up on is one of the worst trades, at least of the last decade. I don't know if there's a list of worst trades in NHL history, but it's got to be up there. And that is it's hard to recover from that. And that deserves all of the criticism from day one it got, and obviously only got worse with it. However, basically every other move he has made, I think, is great. Obviously, the Skinner trade was a steal. Miller trade was really savvy because he was able to take advantage of a team that needed to clear cap space and got a good defenseman for a 3rd-round pick, which was great. He got Jokiharju for a diminishing value forward in Alex Nylander, who, as you mentioned, is now scratched in Chicago, unsurprisingly. He got Brandon Montour, and Brandon Montour wasn't cheap. It took Brendan Gooley, who was a C+, B- level defensive prospect and a 1st-round pick. That's not nothing, but it's not that bad. And they had extra 1st-round picks, and that came from the O'Reilly trade, so they got a little bit from that. But I think most of the moves he has made have been really good on the margins. We're still waiting for that really big trade, and that's why I still think a Ristolainen trade is coming. It has to. There's no way that this isn't going to happen once Montour is healthy. Maybe that's all they're waiting for, is Montour to be healthy, but there has to be a Ristolainen trade.
You look at it too, and when he talked about diminishing, getting a value in a diminishing asset, what are you going to do? Hope that Henry Jokiharju is able to pump up Marco Scandella's tires enough that you can get, I don't know, a 4th-round pick for him, 5th-round pick for him, something, whatever? Or do you pull the trigger and say, look, we can rip the Band-Aid off? Because, we've talked about this. I believe the proper terminology was, we've talked about this ad nauseum at this point, where do you just rip the Band-Aid off and say, look, there's going to be, good or bad, Ristolainen going and being traded will have an effect on this team. They may take a step back for a couple of games, a couple of weeks, or they just may run with it and go from there. But if a trade like that happens, it almost seems like it's better to just, again, you look at the Ryan O'Reilly deal. It wasn't one of the situations where they kicked the can around and said, well, little here, little there. They just ripped the Band-Aid off and said, we like this guy. We like Tage Thompson. This is the best deal we're going to get. Let's do it. And I think that's what they have to do with Ristolainen. And like you mentioned, Ben, when Brandon Montour comes back, they've clearly shown, I don't know if they're trying to showcase Ristolainen or if Ralph Kruger really likes Rasmus Ristolainen, but he's not played any less minutes this season. He's still being pushed out there in big situations. We saw a couple games ago where Ristolainen was out there trying to protect a lead, which shockingly, I was blown away to see Ristolainen be on the ice for a game-tying goal with seconds remaining in the 3rd period. I couldn't fathom that ever happening to him. while Rasmus Dahlin is stapled to the bench and duct taped to the bench, because he's 19 years old or whatever, and he's got to learn, whatever. I digress. But again, something's got to give. And why don't you just rip the Band-Aid off? Because guess what happens? If Joki Haru plays well with Scandella, don't mess it up, right? If you can just switch out Ristolainen for Montour, it's an upgrade, in my opinion. And then you go out and get someone who can play offense, and then you can help your team be even better than they are right now.
Right. So the thing I've grown, and I know if anyone that follows me on Twitter or whatever, I often talk about Ehlers, and that's the dream for me, is that they can get someone like Ehlers in a Ristolainen trade. But I'm convinced that there either was or still is a trade between Buffalo and Winnipeg for Ristolainen and whatever else coming from Winnipeg ready to go. But I think the thing that's likely held it up is the Montour injury, and even more importantly, the Bufflin will he, won't he retire situation that Winnipeg is currently going through. Like, if neither of those things happen, I don't even think Ristolainen goes to training camp. But because the Bufflin stuff came out at the start of training camp, and then Montour gets hurt halfway through training camp, my guess is that likely put everything on hold for the time being, and they're kind of waiting for one, if not both of those situations to be settled and figured out for the trade to go through. And just hurt in that time. And, as far as are they showcasing him or not, I don't know. I never put it past hockey people to depend on the big hulking defenseman. And I get it. I mean, I obviously have never coached anywhere near this level, but I've coached hockey for a little bit, and you are drawn to the big dudes that are pretty good skaters and, have some sort of presence, whatever that presence is, whether it's positive or negative, is often besides the point. You hope to have a coach that looks to the information and realizes that they're having a negative impact. But, I would bet that Kruger just likes him. He's a big right shot defenseman that has kind of a hard slap shot, and he hits guys. Their coaches love them. They just love those guys. And so I would guess that he's just playing them because he likes that.
And one thing I talked about with Brayton on the last Sabrecast that was recorded just a couple days ago was something's got to give with certain guys and kind of how the team. I mean, obviously they're getting lucky, they're winning games now, but when they regress and they need to win faceoffs and things of that nature, you look at things like how they have Marcus Johansson playing center. Joe Yearden points out just a minute ago on Twitter that Johansson was 0 for 9 in the faceoff circle in the game against Dallas, and he's won 17 faceoffs this season, lost 40. He's at a 29.8% clip. So again, at some point in time, when it comes to possession, if you've got him taking a lot of faceoffs, you might need to make something else happen there, and that could certainly shift things around. Or maybe they move a middle set around or call up an Asplin to kind of add another center. I don't know. I'm kind of just taking a look around and throwing stuff at a wall. But again, something's got to give at some point in time, because that's not good.
I mean, to me, in that situation, you just either Skinner, who has actually a pretty good track record in the faceoff circle, relatively limited, but when he's taken draws, he's been good at it. And I mean, if they're going to have Saboka on that line, which is still a mistake, but you're going to have Saboka on the line, have him take the draw, but then Johansson plays the center position, because faceoffs are so, I don't care to get into a debate about whether or not faceoffs matter. I guess the way I sum it up is they are as important as every other puck battle that happens on the ice. So yeah, they matter. You want to win every single puck battle, but they're not. I don't think a faceoff is any more important than the puck battle along the boards or whatever. Anyway, the thing that's more important to me is the actual position of playing center, or which played it or coached it or whatever, is an incredibly difficult position, and all over the ice at all times, essentially more or less following the puck wherever it is and being ready to either support a teammate who has the puck with an outlet pass, or helping your teammate get retrieve the puck from the other team if they're up against the boards, whatever it is. There's a million responsibilities for the center to take care of, and Johansson, I think, has done a pretty good job of it. And so I think that part of the game is so much more important than the 40 draws he's taken in 6 games. What is he playing? 13? He's probably playing 15 minutes a night or something. The 1490 of those 50, or the 1450 of those 15 minutes compared to the 10 seconds of faceoffs he's taken are so much more important to me than a guy winning the draw. So have Saboka take the draw and then have him swap and Johansson play center the rest of the shift, and I think that's how you move along. Or you just take Saboka off the line. That's another topic, I guess.
Hey, you could do that. I would like that idea very much.
Brutal. He's so bad.
We'll save that for a different time, different podcast, different time. Because Ralph Kruger today said he thinks Saboka deserves credit and doesn't get enough credit. And
Unbelievable.
Head desk, just doof. But anyways, Ben, I appreciate you doing this podcast. I know we planned it kind of last minute, so I appreciate you jumping on. It's always a pleasure.
Anytime.
And we'll definitely have to keep doing this because music awards are coming up. We've got hockey coming up still because it's only 6 games. We just talked about it. I forgot how many games it's been already. 6 games into the season for the Buffalo Sabres. So keep an eye out too over at betterlivethandead.com or not betterlivethandead.com for our podcast, but downbytheblade.com for I've got some Amerks stuff going up. I've become the de facto Amerks guy. I believe there's myself and
awesome.
Steel Opus. Steve, he's great. We're both doing Amerks coverage this year. So we'll have some Amerks stuff tomorrow. Keep an eye out for my articles, for Ben's articles over at Down by the Blade. Follow Ben on Twitter at Ben_Mathewson. Normally if a game's going on, you'll see his tweets being retweeted all over. Everywhere I go, I see him, whether they're TV people, radio people, or fans. He's all over the place. And I failed to mention at the start of the podcast, but again, you can get this podcast all across the podcast land. I almost said Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Google Play Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever you get a podcast, you can get this podcast. So again, Ben, I appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
And as usual, as always, I am Ryan Wolfe, and this has been the Sabrecast. As always, we appreciate you tuning in, and go Sabres.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.
What's up, rock soldiers? This is Robbie Vegas coming at you from the All Bets Are Off podcast. If you are into horror movies, the paranormal, professional wrestling, or music, this is the place for you. We're bringing you the latest and greatest interviews in all of the above: music, horror, and of course, professional wrestling. So tune in on the Gear Network. Check out All Bets Are Off. Rate us, like us, subscribe to us, leave us your comments, tell us what you think, and we'll catch you soon on the All Bets Are Off podcast, dropping every Sunday at noon.